Hey, what's up? It's Alfonso on Ask the Fonz. Today I'm excited to share with you my interview with Academy Award winning film editor Mikkel E.G. Nielsen. Mikkel won the Oscar for Sound of Metal in 2020, and during American Cinema Editors' annual event EditFest, I had the privilege of speaking with him about film editing, breaking into the industry, and how to become a better assistant. So definitely check this interview out, and you know what? Without further ado, let's just get right into the interview. I'm excited to introduce Academy Award-winning editor Mikkel E.G. Nielsen. He has edited films such as Beasts of No Nation, Land, and Sound of Metal, which he won for the Academy Award for Best Film Editing this past year. So thank you again. And yeah, let's get started. I mean, how was the Oscar experience, for that? And congratulations on that. And I completely loved the editing in that and thought it was, super unique in the way that the sound and sort of the authoritative point of view shots of Ruben and the way that you edited that was really well done. And it kind of gave me a sort of anxiety when I'm putting on headphones now. Maybe I should not put that on so loud. But how was the actual Oscar experience? Because, I'd love to hear about your point of view in that.
Well, thanks for having me. Well, it was kind of surreal for me coming from where I am, because I'm a Dane from Denmark, and normally we have like international film that we can apply to, but the past 10 years I've been trying to see if I can get work in the US, to try and travel and to try and work with people just like DPs or actors or directors can do. So I was lucky to get involved with this film, Sound of Metal, which was a super interesting challenge, as it was playing with that perspective thing and the use of sound and the lack of sound, and it was very intriguing for me to try and see how I could work with that. So getting to the Oscar show was definitely not part of that plan when I signed on to the project. I mean, just the fact that we got the film to work as it works, and also that our luck is that a lot of people watched it and connected to it. So I'm just deeply grateful and thankful that it got all the acknowledgement, and also that people could see that it wasn't only the sound, but also in the editing where we would make these choices, because it was very much a collaboration. So I was very happy just to be nominated. That's like winning. So also getting a trophy is strange.
No, the film, had an impact on me, and I really enjoyed, even if you kind of turn off the music or the audio, you can really, feel the presence of just the way that the character was going through and how important, the editing was in that. So really well done. We do have a quick question here. Could you talk about your work collaboration process on Beasts of No Nation and Madame Bovary, two films that I love? What was the collaboration in the process of Beasts of No Nation?
So Beast of No Nation was in 2015. I was actually editing Madame Bovary when I got approached by Cary, the director, Cary Fukunaga, who asked if I would join him for this film, and it was super intense because I was away from my family for 6 months, and I almost digged into, I kind of tried to connect with the main character, Agu, who is away from his family. and I almost lived in the edit room for very, very long amount of time. I had a tent in the edit room as well.
Oh, okay.
And it was a very tough story, but also a very moving story, and the way Carrie shot it and wrote it, and his approach to it was just very intriguing for me to try and do the best I could do on that. Um, it was compared to Madame Bovary, it was kind of a similar approach to the material, which I would say is always an approach to material that you keep try to challenge the material and also the characters, and but with respect and love, for sure. And then try and see how far you can push it in terms of to try and find a structure first, to try and find the characters then, and do everything at each step at a time, together, of course, with the director. It was both Madame Bovary with Sophie, but also with Carrie and Beast of the Nation. It was I really liked those collaborations.
Do you approach your editing process similarly or differently when you do a new film? Like, are you approaching your personal editing, I guess the not the style, but like the process of you, okay, I got a new film that I'm starting. Are you approaching it similarly, or is it different for each film?
I try to approach it. It depends on how you see it, because I see it two ways. I see the technical side, which is like the process of material and how to select and how to keep everything organized, with also assistants and everyone who's working on it with me in the edit. I would say that has to be the same way.
Yeah.
But that has to be the same way just for me to relax and to be able to play around with material, and to be as open as possible to the material and what we can do with the material. That way, that said, I am always looking for projects which will challenge me. I'm not doing a lot of films, actually. I'm maybe doing like one feature film every second year or so.
Wow.
And that's probably because I would like to be very humble and also it's about being grateful that someone asks you to take their project,
right?
And then they might have had that in the system for many years, and my approach to their material has to be that I of course I challenge it, but I also try to care for it with them and try to see if we can make their vision as clear as possible. And sometimes it becomes that marriage between a director and an editor, that you also have to fight for things, but also have to challenge things and ask, like, is this necessarily for the story, or is it for the director? And that's where you have sometimes to kill your darlings, for example. I'm not afraid of an argument. I'm not afraid of challenging things, but I have to do it out of respect for the material and for the vision of the director, for sure.
Can you explain sort of that specific, because that's a very interesting topic that I don't think a lot of I don't think we talk about that a lot, is like sort of those conversations behind the room or in the room, in the editing room, where when you don't agree with the director, how do you approach that? Do you show examples? Like, are you saying, here, I want to show you why it doesn't work? Or like, how do you convince the director this isn't the direction we should be going, when they're sort of pushing a specific idea or point of view?
Well, it's important that the edit room is a safe room. And that goes for assistants and editors and directors and producers or script writers or whoever is in that room, that every idea is okay to bring to the table. And even the worst ideas are sometimes like keys to something which will open up the material, and the film will start talking for itself, because you somehow have to find the rhythm or the beat or the breath of the film. And sometimes it's very quirky how to find those small roads down, and you have to turn every stone, and then suddenly you if you're open to the process of not saying this is how it has to be as late in the process as possible, then you're trying things. Then it's like it's playful.
Mm-hmm.
But playful can also be challenging because sometimes it's also about maybe you try something just for the sake of knowing that that's not the road or the way to do the film.
Yep.
And I would say often it's interesting when a discussion, out of a discussion, when it's, for example, the director who brings an idea to the table that potentially you've thought about it yourself, but it's important that through dialogue and through understanding or trying to make someone understand why would that actually be beneficial or a good idea for the film, to try, at least to try. And then if you spend like a little bit of time on trying things and seeing how does that work, and maybe it doesn't work, but maybe there's just one tiny thing that is actually opening up something that which you wouldn't have seen if you just go the safe road, which is just like, let's start with a wide and cut into the dialogue and then end it. So every scene would be like a start, a middle, and an end. But at some point you have to like make everything explode and see what is actually possible in this process. And then you can always bring it back now that it's digital. You can always save those versions and at least try those versions. And especially with sound and with music, you can do so many things, but also with the pacing and where to put status in a scene between the characters, for example. Who should I be looking at and who should actually be saying what? So it's so much about the collaboration in that room, and that everyone can actually bring things to the room.
Do you like to like show your assistants, or how much involvement do you allow your assistants in the creative process? You know, not just doing the tech stuff and the dailies and how much involvement do you think assistants should be a part of the creative process?
But actually, I think I mean, we are the eyes of the audience as editors, and so are assistants. And for example, on my last film, Alex, who's also in this room, I can see, I use him a lot because I have a lot of doubt, or at least I have to pretend that I have a lot of doubt, because I have to try to vision all scenes with different pairs of eyes. And by asking or talking together with Alex or with Darius, the director, or with the producer, or whoever it might be, or the sound designers or anything, you start understanding the scenes more and more. And then you start, little by little, you start making your own idea of what it is that I like and how I see that it should be trying to go. And maybe that's a good thing to do at certain areas, and some people work completely different. But I often edit with an open door, which means that I invite people in and say, what do you think about this? I'm not so afraid of showing things. And I'm not so afraid of hearing other people's meaning or ideas or what they think of the material, because I see it in the broader picture. Because I don't see the film as a finished film. I see a first assemble is a first assemble. It's all about the structure of the story. it's not about the character work. I know that it lacks of the characters, because those are the things that you have to find through each assembly. So it's not like I'm going to show a first assembly to the director and say, that's a finished film. Not at all. But there might be some ideas that could potentially be in the finished film. Right. Because those comes out of my intuition of the first meeting with the material. And sometimes that's very, very special, that you connect with the material in a way that you put it together almost like not thinking about it. But that's just how the material wants to be put together. And then you try all different things, but it's still the first assembly you go back to and say, that's actually interesting how you put those images together. And why, I don't know. But I know that all the different assemblies have to somehow do something different. So you can't work with character work, or at least I can't, before I have a structure of a film. And when I found a structure of a film, it's very easy to start working with the characters. Or then maybe a Sound of Metal, you also have a perspective thing, a sound thing, which you can start playing with. And that's just an extremely powerful tool to have sound as a storytelling tool. Mm-hmm. But that's the same as if people uses whatever wipes, or if it's people using voiceover, or it's people using whatever it is you use as a storytelling tool.
Speaking on that same process, on the flip side, how do you handle sort of when things don't go the way that you want it to go, sort of like editor's block, or you can't seem to figure out a scene, or when you're starting to shape some sort of structure and you can't seem to figure out how to do it? What do you do, or what is your approach on I guess beating that editor's block?
So 10 years ago, my wife gave me a present, and that was MBSR, mindfulness-based stress reduction class for 8 weeks in New York. And it was basically because I've been editing for maybe 25 years or so, and at a certain point, I started. Most of the editorial decisions came by intuition at first. Then I came to film school and I started to create a language with the other students. And we started talking about scenes and characters and these things. But then starting on feature films, I started putting all these things together, and I could easily leave my work and go back out and have a normal life, a family life. But little by little, and it was actually on Madame Bovary in New York, I started bringing those things to the table. If there's back home, it was difficult for me to balance between work life and family life, or me, Mikkel, as a friend or whatever it is. So MBSR was a gift from my wife, who said, like, Mikkel, maybe you can actually learn something from someone by how to approach work life in a way where you can close a mental door and say, okay, you might have problems in this scene or challenges. I don't see problems ever. I have a challenge, and a challenge is interesting because you can try and attack it from so many different ways. And you can always find a solution with any kind of material. I mean, I've actually not been in a position yet through the span of many, many years where I didn't, where I came to short and like, I have no idea what I should do. Actually, I've never been in that situation, because you can always try and attack the material and try and challenge it in so many different ways. But it's about that mental door that you are able to close it, and then sometimes bring yourself into another situation, like a family, or be with your kids, my kids, or my wife, or my friends. And then you can open it again and you can look at it very calm or relaxed, and you can start looking at material in a different way. And what that course did also was that I never panicked. I never, even if it's like the last couple of weeks where we're trying to finish a film, normally I would be like working 24/7 every day, but suddenly I could like see myself leave the edit room and say I'll find the key or the right way to do this scene. And then also it's also about, of course, that you try things and you train that muscle, like that you are I've been in a situation where I didn't know what to do with this, but maybe if you started treating it like a montage, or what if we did it like a scene like that, or maybe it has to be a prologue and we start opening the film with it. Let's see what that does. Or maybe I have to start over again with the material. Maybe I didn't watch the material the right way. Maybe I didn't attack the scene the right way, because the first assembly was meant to be how it was in the original script, but now we changed so much up in that first act maybe that it has to have a completely different thing. So I've already missed those small hidden gems or moments in the scene, and by seeing my selects on my material again, I see something new. Maybe it's in on the last film, maybe it's Alex, or maybe it's Matthew, or maybe it's Victoria, whoever I've had as assistants, who will start put an assembly together of a scene, and I see it with fresh eyes because their edits would be completely different. Maybe in Sound of Metal, where Darius was also working as an editor, he had a laptop trying things. I would see things in a new light, and I would be like, that's actually pretty interesting. So never be afraid of going back and see the material again and see it in a completely new light, because you've changed the film so much that suddenly it's about something completely different. The scene.
That's really interesting. I think, I think time is the only enemy in this situation, because, you're working through all these cuts and you're being playful and trying to make the best edit, but then, you're still racing against time. But yeah, I mean, I think that's quite interesting that sort of locking in that mental aspect of changing gears and seeing, going out in the world and doing different things to keep your mind off editing. And when you come back, you can see it in a different light, which is really, so I think that's for me, when I get stuck in an editing problem, I normally step away and try to just run away from the edit and then come back. And I think hopefully by that time I can see a new idea or a way to solve it.
But it's so interesting because at film school, we were 6 students for 4 years working with the same material. And it's so interesting that your material comes out your way. That's how your approach or your sensibility or your eyes or your way of working with sound or music. And it's completely, your opening may work really, really well compared to mine, which works terribly because I was in a bad mood or I had these strange things. So suddenly over 4 years, you see that the same material can be treated in so many different ways.
Yeah.
6 different people working with the same material, and one way is like this and this and this and this. It's the same as saying a film. The same material could be a horror film, or it could be funny.
Yeah.
You can see trailers where you treat the same material for a trailer in a funny way or in a horror way, just by adding the right music or the right sounds or a different pacing of these things. So you always know that you can at least try to change, and it all goes to being well prepared. And I have to say that's the key to being able to be playful.
Mm-hmm.
It is that you are well prepared in the way you're structured with your project, but
Mm-hmm.
also how you work with the scenes or how you work with your material. I can easily find back to my material and see how many takes do I actually have. Is it the right take? Do we maybe have something else? is there a better look from her to him, or is the opposite? Whatever it is, it's easy to try and put a scene very fast together if you've been structured really well in the first assembly. And it's basically, first assembly is horrible in my opinion, because it's all it's mechanical. I have to watch all the footage. It takes me a long time to understand the rhythm and the pacing of the DP with the directors, or with how the director talks to the actors. And you have the script, and maybe they skipped or they were missing something because of a tight production plan or something. So it's just very mechanical. It's that whole process of looking through the footage, making your selects, having the whole project organized, and then if that's in place, then you can start being playful, and you know that you can always go back because you have seen all your footage, you have everything structured.
That's really important. I think everyone can sort of relate to that. And it's really interesting to hear editors approach dailies and the way that sometimes they don't necessarily watch all of the footage, at the first go. They sort of build, a scene, and then some editors obviously like to watch everything before they start to even create a scene. So that part is really interesting to me as far as dailies go, and the way that they tackle the first.
I really like to spend at least the first couple of weeks just watching material and marking and selecting and putting everything in selects in the scene bins and stuff like that, because suddenly you see the material, suddenly it opens up, and I don't know what happens, but suddenly the material speaks to me, and I have kind of an idea how to put everything together. And then I can actually put a first assembly together very fast. And it might not be the right way, but at least that's the way that it was suddenly talking to you, the material. And then you put that up and you see everything as a whole, and you say, wow, that is interesting because it has so many different directions, or there's so much lacking, but at least you know that you can overcome those hurdles, especially if those are like mechanical plots that I call them, like everything that has to do with he had $100 and now he has $80. How did he use those $20? That's a mechanical plot. I'm not at all interested in it unless it's something which is really, really important for the script or for the director. So let's just get rid of those things throughout the whole film. Okay, let's strip the film for those things and then see it again. Okay, that's interesting. What happens? Maybe we're not opening. It's always about the opening and then the end, right? To try and find the right way to start a film.
That's so interesting. I like that you explain that, because a lot of the times we never know what goes on behind the scenes when you talk about which, if the film is too long, or if we're not, if we have to cut it down, which parts do you go after? How do you approach saying, okay, we have a 2.5 hour or 2 hour film, we need to cut it down to an hour and a half. How do you even start there? Especially if it's already kind of the scenes that you really like, or the story that you've already sort of created. So that's really quite interesting. I do want to ask, who were your mentors, starting out, or how did you get started as an editor? How did you even fall in love with editing and thinking about it as a career? Were there any specific people that helped you, or were there specific films that you watched that you really thought, this is a film that has impacted me and made me pursue editing? As far as that goes, how did you get involved in editing?
I mean, I was interested in I used to play music a lot. I used to play drums. I have a drum kit right next to me here. But I didn't want to become a musician. I wanted to become something kind of like in a band, that group feeling. I wanted to feel part of something. And I was lucky that I was an extra in a film where I was cut out. So suddenly it revealed that someone is actually working afterwards with the material, making decisions. And I found that really intriguing and interesting. And then I went to a thing called European Film College, which is a Danish college, and everyone can apply. So everything is in English, and 50% is like from all around the world, and 50% are Danes.
Oh wow!
They live together at this college. So you sleep and you eat, and you just you don't necessarily have to know what you want to do, but at least maybe be interested in film or TV or something. And then it's a college, so you apply and you're there for 8 months, and you can take these small courses. And I knew that editing was really interesting for me, but I also was very lucky that I met some very good friends today who I still work with, and one was like, I want to be a director, and one was like, I want to be a director too, but the other director was like, no, you should be the DP, and then he became a DP, but I was more like, okay, I would like to sit and edit, because there was so much about finding a rhythm in a scene, or how the dialogue or the look between two is almost like keeping a beat. And then I could also be behind that desk and not be out in the field, and it was just a really nice way to work with it. This is before the digital age. This was on tape, so we would film and work on tape, and then I was lucky that all these people that I met were open to giving me their material, so I could edit a lot. And then little by little, you get confident that okay, I wasn't saying that I knew what I did. I had no idea what I did, but I could feel the things I did. I could feel when it was right or wrong, which is interesting. Why can you feel something? Or at least I had there was like a kind of I don't know. I was just interested in it. And I was interested in trying different ways all the time. I'm never interested in anything which is perfect. Absolutely not. I'm not searching for the perfect, because it's uninteresting for me. It's interesting to challenge things and to try things, which is also why you're never finished with anything. You're finished when they take it away from you. But I could continue working on things. Of course, and I should, and that's also our work. It's like a craft, and my craft is to try and find these new ways of attacking or seeing the possibilities in the material. But also, it's also about giving the director or the producers or anything like that they feel that everything will be okay. When they enter that room, it's like, hey, something interesting is going on here, because it's playful. It's not stressful. I'm not like, why the fuck didn't you choose this and this and this and this? It's like, relax. We'll figure it out. We'll make something interesting out of this, because we can always try and find new ways to look at the material. And we should always be open to new ideas and try it from this or this. And then in the end, if someone is like very much in doubt what to do, I can easily say what I like and what we should go for. I can even also work on my own, probably, and say this is how we're going to do it. And then you can also always get started on that. That's a starting point. Because sometimes you're also working with people who have a little doubt of what they like and what they don't like. So at least you have to take, okay, at least let's just go with this idea and then see what that brings us. Yeah,
I really like that. I mean, it's always refreshing to have an editor who, wants to share and wants to have input on their work, and it, as an assistant myself, I love being involved in that creative process and just being even even just them asking what I think about this scene is always something that I look forward to, whenever I go into work every day. So it's always, it feels good to be a part of that. What advice can you give somebody who's just starting out and wants to become an editor and wants to break into this industry? What kind of, I guess, I know the technical, everyone has to know the technical stuff, but sort of from your perspective in your career, what has helped you get to where you are today?
I mean, it's a really interesting time now because basically anyone can get material and anyone can find an edit program or a laptop or has access to a computer, so you can do it from home. I would definitely advise that you try as much as possible. And I would even reach out to people who I would find interesting or admire or something and say like, hey, would it be possible to look at some of your material? Would it be interesting? And maybe the worst thing that happens is a no. People are extremely generous and open, and even I would even. I mean, that's what I did when I had to learn Lightworks. That was before Avid, so I had like a pendulum, just like 7 seconds of a pendulum in front of a wall, and I would edit it to music and see what does it actually do if it's on the snare drum, if it's on the hi-hat, if it's on, and little by little you learn about rhythm, how to put your cuts and what that does, and suddenly you hear the snare drum only because the images shows you the snare drum, and then you change the rhythm and you only listen to the hi-hat, or then it's only the bass or the guitar, and it's just playful. And then of course it's also about trying to get material where there's like people acting, but it's not so important that it's good actors. It's actually more interesting when it's like poorly acted, because how much you can actually do, how much you can take out of people breathing or sentences, or what this does instead of the dialogue, instead of the word, what happens if it's just a look, or if it's the right music or the right sound, to try all these different parts. Like people doing all these interesting trailers online and putting them on, it's tremendous work, and I learned from it. I mean, that's also why I divide my life into feature films and commercials, or short films and music videos, because those are like toolboxes that I learned so many different things that I can maybe bring into a feature film one day, in how to approach a montage or a dialogue scene or all these things. And it's all about learning every day and trying new things.
Yeah. Do you ever, sometimes when you're editing something, you're like, oh, there's this part in this film that I watched like 3 years ago that would be really like the aesthetic or the way that it was done, I can totally apply it to the way that I'm going to approach this scene. And that's a way to persuade the director or whatever in a way that if you didn't ever watch that movie or whatever the content, maybe it was a YouTube video or something that, a friend showed you, you probably wouldn't have never encountered something like that.
It sticks. I mean, if you see something interesting, it sticks, right? And you remember it. You feel it, and then suddenly, if you're continuing trying to find it in the material, and suddenly you feel it or you see it, that magic when it works, I mean, it's out of this world. It's the most intense feeling that suddenly you've been trying. And it's all about simplicity. It's all about trying to find as simple as possible, which is sometimes completely opposite of what you think, because you complicate things all the time.
Absolutely.
Because you complicate it by, we need all the angles, and we need all the actors, and we need that sound, and it's just more and more and more, instead of going like less, and less is more sometimes, and it's so much more interesting when it just stands on its own.
A scene in my head that's coming up is the Sound of Metal scene with Ruben, and when he's just in that little community and he is by himself with the bagel, I think it was, or the muffin, or the coffee because the community leader told him to wake up early, and you hold on that shot for so long, but it works so well, you know, and it's so powerful without you even, it's silent, it's really just you seeing him contemplating in his situation. And there are a lot of moments in Sound of Metal as well where you hold on the shot pretty long, and I really appreciated those moments because it's just like what you're saying, simple is just works better.
Well, sometimes I think, I mean, at least it's often you start by making things too complicated, and then you find it little by little by simplifying things, and it stands out, and it becomes magical sometimes.
So if anyone has questions, feel free to put it in the chat. Sam actually has one question. Do you have any hobbies outside of editing?
Yes, I do. No, I play drums, which is a hobby, but also a way of distraction from editing. But I mean, I have very much like photography, still photography. So I spend a decent amount on that.
Nice.
Reading as well.
Yeah.
I probably even read more than I watch films.
Oh, interesting. Like novels and fiction books?
Yeah.
That's really interesting. Yeah, I mean, the translation and music.
Music, listening to music. I mean, music is amazing because it puts you in so many different emotions. And it's funny how... It's funny what it does to a film and a scene, and or also the lack of music, what that does. Yeah.
Do you, when you're in a sort of, I guess going back to this editor's block, do you think adding music helps when you're cutting, or do you like to leave music alone and solve it with just sort of the you know, the dailies that's given to you? Like, how do you use music in your process as far as like starting to score, or, you know, obviously if it's scripted and there's music already labeled, you put it on, but as far as like when to start putting music in and figuring out, oh, this scene actually does need music, how do you start figuring that out?
Well, it depends on what kind of project it is, but I mean, as early as possible, if you have the right music, or at least the right music, also meaning that it could be the tone of the film or the commercial or whatever it is, it's very easy for me to edit to music. It's very easy to find that rhythm of it, or how to put it together. And often things come out of a montage, for example.
Yeah.
Suddenly you understand this is where we want to bring, but it's also dangerous, right? Because music can sometimes mud the image a lot, so it feels so nice that it just works so well, but it should probably do the opposite. So often at film school and the first many years, I would actually edit a lot of sequences to the same piece of music, and then I would take it off, and I would only do it for myself and keep it. But you can still feel that rhythm in the scenes, or those moments with that pacing from the music, which is a very nice tool. If you have something that you really like, music, edit to it, because it's very fast to put a sequence together when you have music. It's like working on a music video or something.
Yeah.
But then take it off and see what actually happened, because then suddenly you can feel that it has the same build of the music, or the arc of the music. Even though it's not there, you can still see it in the scenes or in the images.
I've never thought of doing that. I've always put on the music and then left it there, but I'm going to try doing that, to like take it off and seeing the sort of the personality that it gives you after you do that. That's really interesting. Another question. I've done several shorts, but working on features are always a little hard for me to plan. How do you keep yourself in track in a rather long project? How do you keep up with the marathon of a feature film?
I get obsessed, and which means that that's also why I'm not doing so many films, because I really get sucked into the material, and for me, working on features is not a 9 to 5 job. I try to work as much as possible with the material or with the given time they give me, but it's also because it's so. I'm so grateful that someone hands over these images and these ideas that they had sometimes from trying to raise a project over the period of whatever 10, 12 years. So I'm just and I never want to lose that sense that. So for me, it can never just become a job. I can't go from one movie to the next, to the next, to the next. It has to be emotional driven, and it has to be a challenge as well. There has to be something that makes me a little fearful of what I'm digging into, or there has to be a learning process from the people I work with. Also, that I learn something. It's very important that it's a learning process as well. Because I really like adding things to that toolbox and then being able sometimes to open it and try different things and see.
It's really satisfying to sort of bring someone's vision to life, and I think that's editing has that superpower.
But I would say, to answer that question before, it's also very important that certain needs at certain times, and that means that if you're on a feature film, don't see the first assembly as a finished film. It's not a finished product. It's basically just an idea with all these scenes, and then you start digging into that. Try to then find your structure, so you have a structure, the arc of the story. When you have that, don't look until you find that. Don't look at the character work so much. Then you start working on the characters. Then you start working on the polish, and you see things. Then you start working with the music in the scenes and these things. So you do little by little. I never see the thing as a film until I actually have to see it as a film. I look at only the characters. I look at only the music. What does that actually do? What if we took it out? What if we swapped things around? What would that do to the whole story? What if we're much more on her? What if we took her out of the scene? What would that do? What if we lose a character? What if we lose a character throughout a whole film? What does it do? Even though I know that the character has to be there, it's interesting. For example, like in Sound of Metal, I watched an assembly without sound, just to understand what kind of information do you need to get. And it's very little.
That's amazing.
And then by understanding the amount of information that you really have to understand, that also tells you how you can work with the scene and the information in the scene. When can you be external? When can you be internal? Right. What do I need to understand until the point where I just get frustrated and interested in just leaving the film? Because I want to, at least we need to intrigue the audience, and we are the audience. I have to intrigue. And sometimes it's interesting that you make a connection with your audience, and I tell you, Alfonso, that, okay, you might go on a trip or a journey with this film, and it's something you've never seen, but don't worry, I'll keep your hand, and I'll explain things afterwards.
Absolutely.
And sometimes you also have things coming in the end or somewhere in the middle where you might have an issue or a challenge to try, and you have to tell in a different way of storytelling, like a jump cut or whatever it could be. those things have to be implemented earlier on, because it suddenly, if you come here to that point and you haven't seen it up to that point, and you suddenly just get you get out of the movie. But by implementing it little by little by little by little all the way through, that moment suddenly becomes special.
Yep. Yeah, I love movies like that, where you don't know everything that's going on until the payoff.
Yeah, but that's also where you suddenly understand the whole idea of a movie. That of course it can be that we just get thrown out of a film, that suddenly by adding a layer of whatever it is, voiceover, that would like, why is there suddenly voiceover? Now we're in a third character, or watching it from above, or from whatever it is. Those things have to be implemented little by little.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's the editor has a sort of a responsibility to guide the audience in a way that is not so obvious for them, but also keeping them in the dark about things as well, because it makes it more entertaining, and it makes it more of a, I guess it's a better way to watch a film when you don't necessarily know all the details in that specific moment. But when something pays off, it becomes, like you were saying, a special moment when you realize that you put two and two things together. That's a huge responsibility for an editor. And I think that's something that you can't really figure out how to do until you hit that point in that part of that process where you're watching it from a really, really high bird's eye view of the film, and you kind of play and see how to make that happen.
It's just very important that you don't get lost in the material, and you don't get lost in the process of making a long film. I mean, you have to be ahead of things, which is also how you work with that you have to be ahead of things where it doesn't become like a situation that someone brings. I mean, it's interesting to show a film to someone and then see it from a different point of perspective or point of view, because just by knowing that this could potentially become an issue, and it's an active choice that we as filmmakers make. We want to tell it this way, but I know that you potentially could see that as an issue. At least I know it, so it's an active choice. The worst thing that can happen is that you come to me, Alfonso, and say, but Mikkel, why didn't you do this and this and this in the film? Because then you would have achieved this. And I sit in a situation and I think, why didn't I try that? That's insanely stupid that I never even used that amount of time just to try that small thing that could have changed the whole and given you a completely different experience with the material of the film. Which is why it's so important that we challenge it and that we try the things, that we don't just stick with the script or allow a director to tell us, you are just my digital hands, you put this together the way I want. That's not how I work. I want to challenge it, and I want to be able to have a discussion about it. I acknowledge their vision for sure, and I love when a director has a vision, and especially if it's something that you can actually put into the film. But sometimes that's just not the point. Then suddenly if someone doesn't give anything, you have to find it yourself, and then it becomes difficult. It's just like a marriage, right? If you don't play the part, both of you in a marriage, then or at least give something. If it's only one of you who gives something, then you just become suddenly uninterested in everything. But if someone puts something to the table and you challenge it and you discuss it and you maybe even fight about it, but it's all about from the love of trying to make the best thing out of it.
Yeah, and that goes back to what we were talking in the beginning of being open to ideas and being playful, and the way that you were saying, I that's a very eye-opening topic of imagine if you didn't even walk that path in finding that. That's really, really, it's deep.
I mean, we have to be curious all the time. Keep
Yeah.
being curious and being open to things, and also open to. I can never allow myself to lock into a situation where I say this is how it has to be told.
Yeah.
I have to be open to try something else, but on the other hand, I'll also have to be fighting for things if it's really how I think this should be told,
Right.
and someone else is trying to say no, it has to be this because this is how the audience suddenly saw it, like a test screening. But who says that they're right? It could potentially be that they see it in a different way. So it's all about the situation and when to bring things to the table.
Yeah. We have one last question, I guess, since we're running out of time. Sound of Metal certainly feels like an intimate weaving of editing, physical performance, sound, and music. Do you have any favorite aha moments as the cut evolved into what we see now? Were there any specific moments when you were cutting it?
But, I mean, there were a lot of I mean, there was a lot of sometimes there was a lot of frustration to try to find how to tell the story the right way, and it's all about that simplicity. But then suddenly, when you find the balance of how to work with internal, external sound, what kind of camera movement or the way they shot it, what to use, then it also tells you what not to use. And suddenly then it's easy. But it's so difficult to find into that. And I would say that the film was a huge challenge up to the point where we moved the concert up in the first part as the first scene.
Wow.
That wasn't intentional. That wasn't how the script was. But it was, I mean, from a script point, I can definitely see why it wasn't like that. But from experiencing things, it was so difficult to understand Lou and Ruben's relationship without that concert being the opening. But also the whole idea of the project, that we are awakening senses, that we're working with sound and the lack of sound at a certain point. So just opening up on that whole idea of being very aggressive and almost on the edge, and you're like, if this is going to continue for 2 hours, I'm out. You can't listen. You can't almost, and then suddenly it just cuts to that silence, and you go in and you play with like small sounds of air dust and a smoothie machine and him looking out. So you open little by little, and then he loses a sense. But suddenly, by having the concert up in the opening in that film, made the whole understanding of the relationship between Lou and Ruben in the van afterwards, that you understand they have a professional relationship and they also have a personal relationship. And you understand him being just the drummer, also preparing the breakfast, driving the bus, all these things. The relationship between them. He's very caring about her as well. He's still the drummer all the way through. And that wasn't until, I don't know, 8 or 9 assembly that we started doing that. And first we treated it like the whole concert as a title sequence, of course, because you never want to bore your audience. But at a certain point, it just felt like, why wouldn't we just see this whole concert as the opening and feel it being with our main characters? But also, it's about sound, so it's sound that you take in. And that was eye-opening, because that completely changed the whole film. And it was the same image as a start, Ruben in the same image as Ruben on the bench in the end of the film.
I love that. I didn't even think
there's like there was like a circle to that. There's a full circle to that. I
have to rewatch that because, I mean, I love the ending scene, and I was kind of curious. I was like, how is this gonna to wrap everything up, and it was just done so beautifully, where he takes off the hearing aid and just sits in complete silence, and it's just peaceful. And it's the way that you balance the sound in this film was from, I guess, what he can hear versus what's really happening in real life was really well done. And I think it's you've gotten at the right length of how much you can hear what's happening in real life versus what he can hear, because it throws you off, you know, especially when he gets the hearing aid for the first time, and the scratchiness of the noise and the tragedy of what he just did, you know, it really was powerful in that way.
But I have to give credit to Darius, the director there, because he was just so well prepared for this film. He just had so much knowledge in the material that he allowed every department to do their best and to bring things to the table.
Mm-hmm.
And he allowed me and Alex in the editorial department and to be able to play around, and then Nicholas Becker, the sound designer, also that we had a collaboration, or we could try things, and he was so open to say, like, it doesn't necessarily have to be like I envisioned it. If you can show me something which is more intriguing or better, or maybe, and that's how you try to push the bar all the time, because just him allowing me to bring my toolkit, just suddenly I have like a share of the film, and I feel like I can bring something. I can do things with this, and you become obsessed with it, of course, as well. Just the feeling that suddenly you feel what all this is about, and the love for the characters and these things. So it was just for us who have been fortunate to work on the project with that film, it's just one of these very rare, special projects that we can just be very thankful about. But it also tells you what you can actually do with very little, because it was a super low budget film, but it's even shot on film, and everyone just put so much love and work into the whole project.
Did you have to hire a sign language interpreter for any of the scenes that you put? Because I know that you guys put dialogue, you put subtitles.
I mean,
how did that work?
I think we did have a few scenes where we would export and send it to someone, but we also had Paul Racci, who plays Joe in the film, to see it and tell us if something was actually right or wrong. And he's a person who knows sign language, but he's a coder person.
Oh, very cool.
So he could help in that sense. Yeah.
Nice. Well, I don't know if we can just keep going until they kick us out, unless I don't want to take up too much of your time, but maybe we'll end on one or two more questions from the audience if you guys have any, and I will jump into those questions. But I guess my last question would probably be, as an assistant myself, you know, what qualities do you look for in assistants to you know, to help you in your process? Like what are some of the things that you really like when you look for an assistant or working with an assistant? What are the things that make us stand out so that we are, you know, hireable in your eyes?
Well, it's all about energy for me, and it's all about that it's an open environment, that we can talk and that we're being honest as well, but also understanding the process of when to do what. Alex, who's here in this room today, is an amazing guy. I love working with him, but we work together. We've been working for many, many years at Rock, Paper, Scissors. So it's like finding a way to work together. And I don't know if he would say the same, but for me, that's like often he makes decisions that I didn't even think of, but at least suddenly I see that it's when it could potentially have become a problem, it's not a problem because it's been taken care of. So that means that you have more time just to be creative.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's of course it's also about discretion, that what are being said in an edit room stays in an edit room, and about actors or directors. There's so many things are being thrown around that it has to be a safe room where you know that things stay inside. Of course, there's you have to know how to work with whatever the technical side. But beside of that, if you're a person who are eager to learn or try, then at least from my chair, I hope that people I've been working with would say that I'm very open to allowing people or assistants or assistant editors or whatever it is to come with ideas or edit scenes or anything. I'm very open to that. And it's, to be honest, it's also very rewarding for me to learn and see what comes out of that, because it's like it's a collaboration, and I can never be as good as I am unless I have a good team, and if it goes well for me, it goes well for them. And I love that collaboration.
I think Alex actually requested to join here.
Yeah, exactly.
Let me see if I can bring him in. Hold on. Alex, here, let's see.
Hey, Mikkel. Hi, Fonz.
Hey, Alex.
Hey. Oh, I just saw the moderation panel and your name popped up there. So I don't know how long you've been hanging out in the moderation panel section, but welcome. It would be really fun to actually bring you on here to talk to, if you're open to that.
Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Well, actually, on that note, Ricardo actually just asked, did your assistant help with creating the soundscape for the movie? Did you allow him to actively work on the sound design and kind of talk about that process? So maybe we'll just put the spotlight on you, Alex. How much did you work on the sound for that?
Very little for the parts that you're thinking of. Like for like the smoothie stuff, like not the cochlear stuff, but for like the smoothies, the air duster, like that's just general temp assisting sound effects. But for the cochlear stuff like that, we had Nikolai on from the beginning. So he was involved while we were editing. And we were shelving those scenes back and forth with him immediately. And it was just immediately fast turnaround. We would send it to him end of night, and then midday next day he would get it back to us as splits that we would cut in and then start working from. Just so we started that post workflow ASAP, sooner than you normally would. And and he actually did give us a program. Mikkel, I forget what it's called because we put it on your computer and we ran it through there. But it was a program where we would roughly get something that sounded like the static from a cochlear implant. And we would be able to export our own, just export like an AIFF out of Avid and then run it through and then bring it back in ourselves. But that was very temp. That was only for just for us to have something as we were working with Darius. And then anytime that we were in a good spot on any scene, we would still send that out to Nicola in Paris and then wait for him to kick it back to us, basically.
It's called EarCam.
It's called what?
EarCam.
Yeah.
The program.
And what does that do again?
So it basically is like a program that changes the audio scales of the sound, so it becomes that digital sound. And it was a little worse than in the actual film, so we could try and find the right balance of how much would we actually like to be in that world.
Interesting.
Yeah, it was. Probably difficult for you, Alex, to keep track on our what I used for sounds, and then suddenly we exported them, and then how to find backtrack everything.
It's all just assistant bookkeeping, as I'm sure any assistant in this chat will acknowledge.
Yeah, question for both of you then. So Alex, are you in Los Angeles? Like how did the workflow go? Were you guys remote? Like were you in the office, especially during, I guess, I don't know how long the production or how long the post process was, but were you editing together in an office or remotely? Like how was the situation like?
No, we edited the main chunk that we edited in was actually quite fast. We edited between September 2018, and we did our first picture lock, I think, beginning of February 2019. So that was very fast. But and then it kind of went on for a bit after that because Darius kept on coming back with new ideas that we were implementing. But I'm based in New York, so I work with Mikkel whenever he's in New York. But now with the pandemic, we've actually been able to work together even when he's not here. But so we edited, so that's what. Basically about 4.5 months in New York at our office in Rock, Paper, Scissors, New York. And then we spent 2 weeks at Caviar, which is a production company in Los Angeles, finalizing the edit and then approaching our first picture lock. We picture locked back then, and then I think we did 3 bouts of revisions after that. Darius lives technically he lives in Vermont, or Massachusetts, but he is New York based generally, and he would come in every now and then. Sometimes we would work for a weekend just to make he had new ideas he wanted to try, get ideas between when we went to Toronto and after Toronto. So
and sort of what was the you say when you work remotely, is there a specific software program that allows you to make the connection pretty seamlessly, or do you guys just send cuts on Pix or Frame.io or whatever?
Mikkel and I work locally, so we've been doing a lot of commercial work since the pandemic started. So and we work at Rock, Paper, Scissors. So I work remotely through Jump, which I think a lot of people here have used too. We just control, you can access our sand through there. But then Mikkel's connection doesn't allow for that, so I kind of just media manage and shuttle him media constantly whenever we're getting elements in, whether it's music, VFX pulls, or graphics, lower thirds, whatever. And then Mikkel's he's better than most editors about that, knowing how to download and put it in the right place.
Yeah.
But 100%, it's just because we work on Avid, so it's very seamless to work that way. We don't have to constantly worry about relinking media or anything. Just as long as I send him everything, it'll pop up on his end, and we'll shuttle bins back and forth of edits and our work.
Maybe a question for both of you, since you both have experience working in commercials and features. So what are some of the I guess similarities or differences that you feel like that you encounter? I mean, can someone who's started in commercials break into features? Will they be prepared for the workflow, or what's the sort of compare and contrast between those two fields? Kind of just giving insight to people who want to pursue features if they're in commercials, or if they're in features, are thinking about commercials. Is the same, or is it different? What's the process of editing and I guess the assistant side? I'm sure it's quite different, but are there similarities?
My process is exactly the same.
Interesting.
I would treat but what commercials does to me is that it gives me a speed and a pace to make decisions fast. So it trains that muscle to make fast decisions and try to challenge material in different ways very fast, which means that, at least for myself, that I can try a lot of different things in a very limited amount of time. It doesn't take too long, and I think some directors would probably say that I work very fast. And how to put things, or maybe assistants as well, but that's all part of that process, and which is why it's very valuable for me to go from different projects like commercials or music videos, shorts, to feature films, because it basically allows you to train those muscles of how to challenge material in different ways.
Very cool. There is a question for Alex. Did you get the chance to do passes for scenes throughout editorial? And Mikkel, do you find helpful that your assistants present first passes on scenes?
So in a way, as Mikkel mentioned, Darius is editing with us on Sound of. I assume this question is for Sound of Metal. And then so Darius is working with us, but he had never used Avid before. So initially, I kind of sat with him for a few days just to show him, like, because he's very used to Final Cut 7. So I was telling him, okay, so you kind of have to wrap your head around how Avid works. You know, everything you don't. I guess you could copy paste, but not, it won't result the way you want it to. So then a lot of ways, sometimes if we had an extra edit bay free at Rock, Paper, Scissors, like I would just sit with him for a day and kind of be his hands. So I guess in that sense, I did a little bit of pass, but probably not to the extent that I do for a lot of our commercial projects, where I kind of do like a full-on pass each time before Mikkel, just so Mikkel can see before we get into the weeds. And we also did get I don't even remember what it looks like because we saw it so early, but we did get a rough assemble done by another editor, Ariana Tomasedig, who was a friend of the producer. And she, I think, edited before Mikkel and I even came on. So we had before our assemble, there was another assemble. So it was, we already had a way of seeing it after reading the script. And then we did our own, obviously we did our own assemble from scratch, but it was also very helpful to see her pass on that initially, just because everything changed constantly from her pass to our assemble to how the film actually wound up. I mean, our first assemble of the film, like scripted, was 4 hours.
Wow.
Which is, whenever I tell it to people, like, people are always blown away because it's just like, wow, how was that long? But no, it was. It was a really very epic script that Darius wrote. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
but I would be very worried if it wasn't 3 hours. And I think it ended 3 hours, 45 minutes. I mean, that tells you that you have material to work with, because you can easily get things down to 2 hours. It's not so. I mean, if the first assembly of this kind of movie, where an assembly is very loose and you have start, middle, and ends in all scenes, and if it's like less than 3 hours, I would start very much worrying about if we actually do have enough material for this film. So being long is not necessarily a bad thing at all. It's more about that everything is there.
Yeah, that actually goes back to the topic you were talking about earlier, where, you know, how do you find those moments to cut down? So in this situation, you know, a 4 hour cut, where were there moments where how did you get it down to what it is now from a 4 hour to a 2 hour movie? Like that's yeah.
But that's where it takes itself, and that goes from that the question about how do you keep track of or focus on a feature film. It's about allowing yourself to see certain things at certain times. It's not about trying to see the whole film. You only see the structure of the film. You only look at the structure of the film. And if you have an arc and you can see this, then you also see that there's a lot of small roads down that thing and that thing and that thing, and maybe there's way too many. So you start just like getting rid of those small things, and then suddenly you find out, oh, you took way too much out, and then you suddenly start finding that way of storytelling, how to start a scene or how to end a scene, how to get into a scene, what kind of image do you go into a scene with. Then you suddenly, you know that you want to play, in this instance, on Sound of Metal, we want to play with internal, external sounds, which means it's lack of information, which tells you when you found the language, the language of how to tell this, then you have to stick to the idea. It's like a dogma. It's like a rule. If you stay and stick to that idea, that is the contract between me and the audience. That they know when we do it like this, that's how we tell the stories. That's how we get into the head of Ruben. But that also helps you in terms of, okay, so if this is how we tell a story, internal, external, then maybe there's a few scenes which have been shot completely different, which are wonderful and make sense, but they're just not for this film because we want to tell the story this way. Mm-hmm. And then we stick with the idea. We stick with that rule, which is also why we, for a very, very long amount of time, had like a beautiful montage in the middle when there's that slide scene with the boy. That out of that came a very nice montage from a piano piece where the kids are listening to the piano with their hands, which was much longer. But out of that, suddenly you could see that's a completely new language. We've never spoken that language. It works so well in so many other films. But for this one, stay away. That's eye candy. Let's get rid of it. These scenes have to be told. It has to be hard cuts. You can't have like fades from sounds from that over to the next scene. It has to be, if you have like time passing, show time passing, it's like a tree, and then you go into a situation. That's how this film wants to be told.
Right. Yeah,
because
there's that.
You suddenly start to relax, which is why we have some montages, but then it's an internal, emotional driven, like Ruben going from a diner to Joe's place, where it hard cuts in his emotional state of mind. These, it sounds like that. You move with him towards something. That's a completely different thing. That's not like a montage. It's just like a traveling montage. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was like that shot from when he went to Paris with the plane in the sky. It was cut quick, and then you go into like the bicycle sounds or the ambulances, and now you know you're in Europe, and it really followed through on all of the same approaches the way you did the beginning, where you just straight cut into the trailer and the van, and he starts making coffee, or he starts his day. But that was really interesting and powerful. But that's a very insightful way of explaining how to cut it down from 4 to 2 hours. I'm always curious how that is, because it's, we're always not really, we're closed off from those conversations, especially when you don't know that the film like this was a 4-hour film before, and now it's, obviously cut down. So it's interesting to hear stuff like that. I love kind of like asking questions about that. Ricardo has another question. How important was the long duration of the post-production for the movie to get to the final result? Working in streaming series, I often feel so rushed and miss the time that features get to work. How long was the process for making this film?
So it was a very intense, short amount of editorial time.
Oh, wow.
Then there was a lot of sound work, and then we screened the film, and we instantly also felt that we needed to simplify certain things. And those were like learning lessons from what the sound team amazingly had done to the film. That suddenly there were like things that you could tell a little differently or simpler. Or, for example, that you can't have a montage suddenly in the middle of the film, because there was a first screening. Those were like learning things. So we took out 12 minutes of the film after our first screening, and that was very good, I think, for the version that you see today. Yeah.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's really cool. If anyone has more questions, I see a time left, 22 minutes. I think that's for the whole show, but I think we're supposed to be wrapped up really soon. So maybe any last parting advice from you, Alex, or Mikkel, to share for any aspiring film editors here? I know I asked that question to Mikkel, but maybe Alex, if, as far as assistant editing goes, you know, what sort of advice can you give someone who just broke out of college, wants to get into this industry, and wants to do what you do?
I think I can't give any advice that Mikkel didn't give better already, just like with most things when we were together. But I mean, I think just be open to a lot of things.
Yep.
I mean, we do a lot of commercial work, but that's how I wound up working with Mikkel. Like, I didn't, just by happenstance, like, I just started assisting him on commercials, and he's been so kind and a great mentor. And he was so kind to bring me on The Sound of Metal and Land. So, and that's not a door that I could have predicted. You know, that's not something that I necessarily knew. So I guess just, you know, kind of never know where opportunities arise. I think that's a common thing that's been discussed a lot. And you never know where opportunities can come from. So just be open to things, even if you're not hitting the ground running. Like, doesn't seem like anybody does anyway. So, you know, just not to say things will always work out, but I guess just to say you never know. Just, you know, just always work. I mean, the advice I give myself every day, try to tell myself every day, is just like, just try to do the best just try to do the best on whatever you're working on right at that moment.
Absolutely. Yeah. And again, like you're saying, you just never know. You start a gig, and then that could lead into something that you dreamed of working on, and it just keeps snowballing in that way. So absolutely, completely agree. Well, thank you so much, Mikkel and Alex. And Alex, thanks so much for hopping in.
Thank you for having me. Yeah.
For really improvly here to help out with the panel. I really appreciate both your time, and thank you so much for hanging out. And if you didn't see all of the interview, it'll be up on the website. So feel free to check it out when you end today's stream. So thanks again for everyone who put in questions, and for everyone who's watching. Hopefully you guys got a lot out of this. So thanks again, Mikkel, and thanks, Alex, for your time. And hopefully we'll do this again.
Thanks, Alfonso.
Well, thank you.
All right. Thank you.
You have a good day, all of you.
All right.
Yeah. Bye.
Bye-bye.
So thank you so much for watching my interview with Academy Award-winning film editor Mikkel E.G. Nielsen. I hope you got a lot out of his advice with the politics of editing, the prep work it takes in order to complete a feature film, the tips that he gave in order to become a successful assistant editor in this industry. So if you want more videos like this, feel free to subscribe down below, like the video, and share this video with all of your pursuing aspiring film editors out there. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you found something useful here. Until next time.